Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, your uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 5 and episode number 786 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Thursday, November 13th, 2025, and it is a gray day here again at the Beaver Lodge. We've had a rather gray November. Again, lots of rain, lots of moisture. We definitely need it because we didn't get it this summer. But it's getting a little harder on the internal sunshine, especially since we're still in the time where the days are getting shorter until we get to around December 21st, and then it's all uphill from there. But yeah, a little bit gray today, and I could have used something different today. I will not lie. Yeah, I'm your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A, and not with me, as usual, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast's founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Kids and Cubs, we have a show for you today where we will be talking about both major projects and Pierre's inability to either pivot or take criticism. And if we have an opportunity, we might throw a couple of extra things in here as we're telling these stories. But those will be our main two topics today. Kids and Cubs, how is your mental health doing today? Mine is doing significantly better. I finished my course of antibiotics yesterday. However, it is a type of antibiotic that keeps working for several days afterwards and stays in the body before you get through it. And I don't know if that's the case for you, but when I take antibiotics, it kind of saps my energy a little bit. So even though I am seemingly back to normal, my voice is back. I'm looking fresh, even smaller bags under my eyes today than the rest of the days over the past little while. And my energy is much better. I feel that I'm not fully back yet. I'm still having I'm still some a low grade fever at nights because I'm still waking up with the bed soaking wet. Um, so hopefully that will stop because it's a little uncomfortable. But other than that, things are going well. I'm just raring to get back to my old self because everything else seems fine. Appetite appears to have come back. A couple of nights ago when we had our anniversary dinner, I actually ate the full meal and was slightly uncomfortably full when it was done. And I seem to have put 2 or 3 pounds back on, which is good. Not that I don't want to lose them again eventually, because I am trying to lose weight, but 6 to 7 pounds in 2 days is just way too fast. Um, and so yeah, I'm feeling good that I was able to put a little bit of weight back on. Also got some relatively good news overall because, as you know, kits and cubs, I hadn't had a family doctor in about 15 years, and finally got one, and finally had my first sort of overall general physical, uh, in again 15 years. And it seems that absolutely everything is good except that I'm running a little bit of high cholesterol. Apparently, my good cholesterol is very good. The rest of it, however, is just a little bit above normal. It can be corrected with diet and exercise. I prefer to do that than more medication. I take enough. So I'm good with that. Uh, so yeah, I will be taking care of that. But other than that, yeah, everything seems to be. I seem to be, um, knock wood, uh, pretty healthy for a in general, and particularly for my age. So yay me, yay! But yeah, you know, I suspect that at the time I did the physical, I was probably I weighed even more because I had lost weight already. With the musical, I always lose weight, so I am about at the worst of the illness. I was 15 pounds down from my peak. So yeah, I'm about 12 pounds lighter than I was when I took the test. So maybe that has already had an impact on my cholesterol. So, but just a couple of things, need to cut a few sweets from my diet because that is my downfall. I'm a sweet beaver. I got a sweet tooth. So, trying to curb the sugar a little bit, but the rest is just adopting a tad bit more of a Mediterranean diet, which I indulge in a lot to begin with. It's the kind of food I'm naturally drawn to anyway, so that part is good. So it won't be that big. Won't be a hard switch for me. It's just a couple of more of not even so much a diet, but a couple of more conscientious choices, and to try to add a bit more activity in the winter, other than curling, because curling is a lot of fun. And trust me, we play hard, especially with the new style of playing and all that kind of stuff. But it's not like tennis and it's not like dancing. It's not the more strenuous of the aerobic activities. So I'm dug out the cross country skis, and I'm going to go get to some waxes, and that I'll probably be doing more of that this winter, given that about a block and a half from where I am, there's this huge field, and you can just put your skis on and then just go on and sort of like make this big loop, and that will certainly uh, help because I think cross country skiing and swimming are the two best sports you can do for your body because you use your entire body and it's low impact and cardio at the same time. So I'm going to be adding that and to my repertoire, and maybe that will take care of it relatively permanently. I've never liked being a little bit over, and I've always been pretty good at maintaining it. But every now and then, um, I let slip a little, and sort of need to call myself back to order, which I will do because fortunately I'm someone with pretty decent discipline when it comes to health. So, overall, good news. Happy Beaver. All right. And I hope everything is well with you today. So, let us get into it. And for those who read the show description, maybe you saw what I did there. Huh? Huh? Did you? Did you? Linda. Yes, kid Linda. And then comes turtle season. Yeah. Basically, that's the story of my life. right? Is um, I, uh, I gain weight, and then somewhere I decide to take it off, and somewhere around December, I finally get my bikini beaver bikini body. But since I don't typically go down south, I got nobody to show it off to other than my beaver sweetie. And then Christmas comes and it's turtle season, and there goes the bikini body. And the cycle begins again. Ah, boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Gee, gee. And yeah, since we're talking about weight, yes, it's true. You did mention that um, in the chat there that Trump apparently making some comments about not wanting uh, fat people coming to America, for lack of a better term, and that being targeted on Rosie O'Donnell. And my first thought when I saw that comment in the chat is, but damn fam, you need to understand that in Trump's reality, right, the only people that can be fat, right, are those suckers and losers in the military and women. That's it. That's it. Because if Trump looked in a mirror, he certainly wouldn't say that he could stand to lose a pound or two, right? He's in prime athletic shape. Was that 6'3", 239 or something like that? Anyway. So yeah. Mm. Anyway, moving on. Um, yes, I saw that, this comment here, that, also, uh, um, some comments there in the chat about how quickly I bounced back. That's Kadar Grossi Acres there. Poor Douglas. It's amazing how you bounce back so quickly. I'm actually very surprised myself. I have a little bit of an ability, or so I believe, to kind of will myself back to better health. It's happened a couple of times. Sometimes when I've had something really big coming up, and it's like, and I've gotten sick, and it's like, you do not have time for this right now. Just get over this. And then somehow I do. Um, but considering how fast I went from being normal to how low I was, it really is amazing that I just sort of like hit like the bottom and sort of like bounced like a trampoline and whoop and just sort of started going back up. Very grateful because opening night on the show is in 7 days. Yeah. That look in my eyes is a slight terror. That always happens, though. About 2 weeks before the show, there's always somebody that starts yelling, "We're not ready. We'll never be ready." And then about 1 week before the show, it's like, the other day that does that as well as when the director turns around, "Okay, you're now off book and not allowed to say line." Call for line, and then everybody panics, "Ah!" And then you realize that you know much more than you thought you did actually, because at the time, the script can be a little bit of a crutch. But I'm doing better. I had fallen behind a little bit um, with illness because I had a cold a couple of weeks ago too. So I had missed a couple of rehearsals there. So I had fallen behind on a couple of things. So every now and then we were doing the choreographies, and just standing there like, where am I supposed to be right now? I don't know what this next step is. And it's like, oh, we changed that. Oh, okay. That's why I'm in the wrong spot. What's the new thing now? Because I mean, at some point when there's 34 in the cast, it's up to you like to figure out your own stuff and what you missed, right? You can't just like go back and it's like, can you give me a special lesson just for me, telling me what I missed? So you have to rely on your castmates and ask people and figure it out and notice where you're screwing up and be honest about it and say, yeah, this part I'm not getting here. Can you help me with that? And everybody's always willing to help each other out. So thank you to my castmates who have been giving me all the little tips and hints that I need, like which foot to lead off of. Which kinda helps when you're doing partnering work so you don't step on toes. But, yes, I am, catching up on the little bits that I missed, and, I'm pretty much equal with everyone now. So now it's just, again, still some polish, not, I'm not delivering 100% perfect performances yet, but it's getting there. It's getting there, and, I've got 7 days, and we all got 7 days to fix that stuff up, and we move into the actual theater in which we'll be performing this weekend. So, that changes things too because we've been practicing entrances and exits by putting tape markings on the floor where they are in the theater. But you don't really know how much room you got backstage, and how all that circulation, how all that's going to work with all the set pieces until you actually get in it. So that's the stuff we're going to have to be rejigging a couple of things, and there's certain things that we did in rehearsal that are just not going to work. That's always the case, and we'll have to problem solve and troubleshoot. But that's what it is. When you get to those last 7 days, it's fix what is not working, and do it once, and everybody retain it now, and never forget it for the rest of your lives. So, because we don't have time to repeat this. So it's a bit nerve wracking, but it's also very exciting, and of course, um, a deadline often brings clarity to the mind, right, and helps you prioritize. So that's where we are right now. Okay, now let's get into it. Kits and cubs, today is a very, very, very big day in the nation because, as you know, Prime Minister Mark Carney, at one point when he was announcing the first list of major projects of national importance to be approved, also hinted that sometime around the Grey Cup or prior to it, there would be an announcement of a second series of projects under the whole sort of major projects for of national interest banner. And it would appear that while he was in New Brunswick yesterday, for making some announcements and having meetings and all of that good stuff. I believe he might have had a meeting with Premier Susan Holt somewhere along the way because I saw that she had a major press availability yesterday, which I unfortunately was not able to listen to. Rehearsal went rather late yesterday. So, so this is, I suspect that Prime Minister Mark Carney would have had a meeting with her at that time, particularly since it would appear that one of the major projects will be based in New Brunswick. So, it seems that he will be in Terrace, British Columbia later today around 11:15 a.m. Pacific time, which would be 2:15 p.m. Eastern time if my uh, time conversion is correct. And that's where he will be making the announcements. So, in enough time for the evening political shows to cover today. This is after he had a virtual meeting with his front bench team yesterday in order to coordinate some stuff. And it seems that the coordination is necessary because there will be other announcements today over the course of the day from other members of the team. They're calling them synchronized announcements at iPolitics. It would seem that Dominic LeBlanc, who is serving as the cabinet lead for Canada-US relations and also the minister responsible for the One Canadian economy, and Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson at 3 p.m. will be making announcements in Montreal and Toronto. And it seems as well uh, that later on in the day, not so much this won't be connected to the projects earlier in the day, I should say, because this happens before Prime Minister Carney will be marking the events, but sort of as a prelude to it. In Toronto, Finance Minister François Philippe Champagne will be selling the budget because he's on that tour with an armchair discussion with District Ventures Capital founder Arlene Dickinson, who's also, I believe, on that advisory panel for trade with the United States, as well as regional commerce leaders at the Canadian Club in Toronto in an event which, according to the Minister of Finance's office, will focus on, quote, the steps Canada's new government is taking to grow the economy, drive private investment, spur growth, and leverage Canada's strength to turn challenge into opportunity. And that will be at 11:45 this morning. So I see the day going, this big talk at the Canadian Club, where they will probably selling the budget and teasing a little bit about these projects and how they fit in as with the budget and all that kind of stuff, and the overall plan to reorient Canada's economy and diversify trade and trading partners. Uh, then, of course, the announcement by the Prime Minister, and then followed 45 minutes later from the time the Prime Minister starts talking, by synchronized announcements in Montreal and Toronto by two of the Prime Minister's most trusted members in his caucus, his good friend Tim Hodgson, and of course Dominic LeBlanc, the Minister of Everything, pretty much. So, so yeah, that's what we've kind of got to look for today. And then, of course, we'll have a whole bunch of interventions from other players and stakeholders throughout the day. And of course, the opposition parties breaking. I bet you the Conservative Party of Canada says that these are not real projects or something of the sort. It's not enough. Not enough, not good enough, not fast enough. Something like that. I'm going out on a limb here. But with regard to the projects themselves, let's take a little look, if you will, kits and cubs, at what appears to potentially be on the horizon here. According to CBC's Kate McKenna, Prime Minister Mark Carney is set to announce a second set of nation-building projects, including at least 3 focused on critical mineral extraction, 1 for exporting liquefied natural gas, and at least 1 transmission project, sources told CBC News. They said there will be a total of at least 6 projects, including the Sisson Mine for critical minerals in New Brunswick, the Crawford Nickel Project in Ontario, the Xylisms no, sorry, I mispronounced that. The Xylisms Liquefied Natural Gas Project in British Columbia, an Iqaluit Hydro Project, and the Nouveau Monde Graphite Phase 2 project in Quebec. So those are 5. And it says of the remaining 2, so there could be up to 7 here then. At least 1 will be a transmission project, the sources said. CBC News is not naming them because they are not authorized to speak freely about internal government decisions. So, yeah, I think there might be a typo there because they named 5 and then they said of the remaining 2, but saying that there's only 6 projects. So, something may not have been properly updated in that article. The list has not been officially announced and can still be changed until then. Identifying major projects has been a key tenet in the federal government's push to reshape the Canadian economy amid trade and productivity concerns. The federal government announced its first tranche in September. Being on the list is meant to help spur private investment and clear red tape for projects facing regulatory hurdles. Carney said Monday he will make this week's announcement in Prince Rupert, British Columbia, prompting speculation that the Indigenous proposed Xylisms natural gas liquefaction facility and marine terminal project would be on the list, speculation that sources confirmed. The planned capacity is up to 12 million tons of LNG per year, representing a major economic and employment opportunity. Ottawa gave the project the green light to move on to the next stage of seeking approvals and permits in September. The Nika Nation is listed as one of the 3 principal proponents alongside Rocky's LNG partners and Western LNG. 3 of the new projects, the Sisson Mine in New Brunswick, the Nouveau Monde Graphite Mine, and Crawford Nickel in Ontario, focus on critical minerals. Again, a Nouveau Monde Graphite Mine, I believe, is in Quebec. Yes, indeed. For some reason, they didn't put it in that line there. Sources say Natural Resources Minister Tim Hodgson is set to announce the Crawford project in Timmins, Ontario on Thursday. So the synchronized plans, which means I would suspect Dominique Leblanc would be in New Brunswick for the Sisson mine, given that he does represent a New Brunswick riding. But he could end up also at the. But no, it's no, because they sent synchronized project announcements in Toronto and Montreal. So he will probably be then announcing the Nouveau Monde graphite mine, and I would guess in that case that maybe Minister Holt, Premier Holt might be having more to do with regard to the Sisson mine in New Brunswick, and perhaps some MPs from New Brunswick in the caucus might be there for something having to do with that. The proposed mine, this is the Crawford project in Timmins. The proposed mine is currently in the permitting stage, having passed the feasibility step in 2023 and is planned as an open pit mine. An economic impact study found it has the capacity to create about 1,000 direct and 3,000 indirect jobs. The Sisson tungsten mine north of Fredericton is also expected to be on the list. If it goes ahead, it would extract an average of 30,000 tons per day of tungsten and molybdenum containing ore for on-site processing. New Brunswick Premier Susan Holt told CBC's Power and Politics on Monday that she was pleased a project from her province had made the list. It is, quote, great news for New Brunswick and we have pathways on other projects that we're encouraged by, she told host David Cochran. The recent federal budget includes a new, quote, critical minerals sovereign fund committing $2 billion over 5 years for strategic investments. And finally, an Inuit-owned clean energy project in Iqaluit is expected to be included on the list. The federal government announced $6 million in funding to the Nunavut Nukiqsutit Corporation earlier this year for its Iqaluit Nukiqsutit hydro project. Once built, it would be a 15 to 30 megawatt traditional water power plant. It could help the city reduce its reliance on diesel generated power. So that will also have a green impact in terms of displacing carbon generating power generation here. Carney has said the Major Projects Office mandate will be a living list and new entries will be routinely added. Quote, this is not a one and done, he said in New Brunswick on Monday. It's not one round of projects and then we move forward. So those are certain of the things that are on the list, and we'll see how that develops. But that's not all. The work has been continuing on things having to do with major projects and reorienting the economy. So this announcement is sitting in a basket, if you will, of various um, adva- advancements and data points that have come in that all are painting an overall picture. Now, one of the first things that has happened that hasn't got a lot of press, and this is brought to us by Aya Dufour of iPolitics, is that there has been a first meeting between the Major Projects Office and its Indigenous Advisory Council. According to Aya Dufour, the Major Projects Office Indigenous Advisory Council met with CEO Don Farrell and other senior team members for the first time late last week. The Carney government launched the Major Projects Office in late August to streamline regulatory approvals and help coordinate project financing. It appointed 11 representatives from First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities, 11 stellar representatives, very high achievers. The announcement of that was really a celebration of Indigenous success. It's very impressive. It appointed 11 representatives from First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities to an advisory body tasked with guiding the Major Projects Office, or MPO, on how to include Indigenous perspectives and interests in major projects. This came after some First Nation groups pushed back on Bill C-5, the legislation that established the creation of the MPO, voicing concerns that it would bypass meaningful consultation and undermine Indigenous rights at the expense of accelerated economic development. Natural resource sector veteran and businessman J.P. Gladu of Bingwi Nayashi Ashnanabik is on the Indigenous Advisory Council. He told iPolitics the first meeting with the MPO was very productive and allowed members hailing from across the country to get to know each other. Quote, Don Farrell means business, he said. We don't have a lot of time. We have to be purposeful in everything we do. Gledu says both groups are working on finalizing the terms of reference that will guide the working relationship. We don't have a veto, said Gledu. We are not the decision makers. We are here to act as conduit. The terms of reference will define the purpose, scope, and responsibilities of the Indigenous Advisory Committee. They will guide how the group can formulate recommendations and how the Major Projects Office incorporates them into specific projects and engagement sessions. Gledu says members of the Advisory Council won't all agree on everything, and he's aware there may be difficult conversations ahead. For instance, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is planning on making a formal submission to the MPO for a new bitumen pipeline through northwestern British Columbia, and that proposal is a non-starter for coastal First Nations. That situation is bound to complicate the work of the MPO's Indigenous Advisory Council, but Gledu says many around the table have experienced navigating something like that. Quote, I've been in uncomfortable situations my whole life, he said. I'm not worried about it being uncomfortable. What I'm worried about is the status quo, things continuing as they are. Gledu believes there needs to be movement on natural resource projects given the economic climate. He would have to step aside from any MPO work on an Alberta pipeline, however, as he serves on the board of Suncor, one of the companies providing technical advice on the project, and would have a conflict of interest. The Advisory Council is set to meet at least once every 3 months, with more meetings planned depending on the pace of certain projects. Other appointees on the council include Mi'kmaq entrepreneur Victoria Labillois, Grand Chief of Treaty 8 First Nations Trevor Mercredi, and former Haisla Nation Chief Councillor Crystal Smith. During her tenure, Smith notably helped secure $6 billion for the Cedar LNG project. She's also chair of the First Nations LNG Alliance. So there you go. First meeting, positive. That's always a good sign. Things are progressing well on that front. As well, kids and cubs, in that sort of overall list of things that are going on. Let's see, what do we have here? It seems that there will be another meeting with between the Prime Minister and the premiers here. According to the Canadian Press, I believe it is. Yes, it is. This is Alessia Pacifium, who mentions here infrastructure investments and the state of US-Canada trade negotiations are high on the agenda, as Canada's premiers have for Oh, sorry, that's my mistake. I added a word there that shouldn't have been there. Infrastructure investments and the state of US-Canada trade negotiations are high on the agenda Canada's premiers have for an upcoming meeting with Prime Minister Mark Carney. The premiers laid out their priorities for the meeting in a letter to the Prime Minister made public on Tuesday. The virtual meeting with Carney is scheduled for November 17th. That's going to be a big day. Virtual meeting with the premiers and, I believe, a significant budget vote. The meeting will be the latest in a series of meetings between the premiers and Carney since he became prime minister earlier this year, but it has been a couple of months since the last one. I had a feeling with the start, the way he was going about it, that they would be happening once every month or something of the sort, and there's sort of like been a gap since the last one, and you've had a little bit of not dissension, but expressed consternation from some of the premiers saying, well, gee, call us all together and give us an update. What's going on here? In their letter, the premier said Canada's relationship with the United States has changed significantly since their last meeting in August. You don't say. And more on that later. And it's important to keep the provinces in the loop. See, there you go. Quote, engagement among First Ministers has been key to information sharing, coordinating efforts to increase internal trade, ensuring the affected workers and enterprises receive adequate support, and most importantly, responding to the evolving dynamic with our largest international trading partner, wrote Premier Rob Lance of Prince Edward Island. It's imperative that this collaboration continues. Lance currently chairs the Premiers Association known as the Council of the Federation. Premier said in the letter they appreciate Carney's commitment to regular meetings and said Carney's economy is best served when there is collaboration between Ottawa and the provinces and territories. The meeting comes weeks after US President Donald Trump halted trade talks with Canada after erupting over an anti-tariff ad the government of Ontario Premier Doug Ford aired in the United States, and for some reason has not appeared to take a hit in the polls for having none. The ad featured archival video of former President Ronald Reagan criticizing tariffs in 1987. Ontario initially paid about $75 million for the ad, which was to run on multiple American television stations until January. After Trump's move, Ford pulled the ad, but only after it ran during the first weekend of the World Series. Canada's trade talks with the U.S. are sure to be on the table Monday as the premiers press for an update on the state of relations and negotiations between the two countries. They also want to discuss trade relations with China and India, the federal major projects push, and federal infrastructure investment. Quote, as you noted in the speech from the throne, this moment is an opportunity for Canada to embark on the largest transformation of its economy since the Second World War, Lance wrote in the letter. This transformation will best occur and will maximize the opportunities and benefits for all Canadians when First Ministers are working collaboratively. Premiers look forward to meeting with you and to realizing this opportunity together. So there you go. Things seem to still be positive with regard to relations between the federal government and the Council of the Federation. And that's always good to see because, that's um, that's normally where there have been breakdowns in the past. Another piece of news that has come out that is somewhat related to all of this is, as you know, Kits and Cubs, because we featured it on the show, we had an interim parliamentary budget officer who appeared to like the spotlight, maybe a little too much, maybe. And made some statements that our two previous parliamentary budget officers and one deputy parliamentary budget officer would have described kindly as, I don't know, ill advised, perhaps. And it would seem that, according to the Canadian press, that Ottawa says it's looking to hire a permanent parliamentary budget officer, someone with tact and discretion. Ow. Ooh, ouch. Ouch. That is a shot across the bow that reads, thank you, Jason, Jacques, or Jakes, for your work as the interim, but you're not it. We're looking for someone with tact and discretion. Me, ouch. Mm. Wow. Whew. Okay. Let's start from the beginning again. Ottawa says it's looking to hire a permanent parliamentary budget officer, someone with tact and discretion, just a few months after appointing a very critical fiscal watchdog on an interim basis. The federal government's list of governor and council appointments includes a posting for a new budget officer, an independent agent of parliament who offers analysis of budgets, campaign promises, and other spending plans. The Liberals appointed Jason Jakes, a veteran of the office, as an interim PBO for 6 months back in early September before the House of Commons began sitting. A PBO can serve for a term of up to 7 years with a chance for renewal, but a permanent appointment must be approved by Parliament. Since taking the reins, Jakes has been highly critical of the federal government's fiscal plans. In his first few weeks in the role, he called the pace of Ottawa spending, quote, stupefying, shocking, and unsustainable. Jakes also questioned whether the Liberals still had fiscal anchors, metrics that show prudent financial and debt management, a criticism rebuffed by Prime Minister Mark Carney and Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne. Jakes has yet to weigh in on the federal budget tabled on November 4th. His office said he would release an analysis in the coming weeks to coincide with parliamentary debate over proposals in the new spending plan. Kevin Page, Canada's first PBO, gave the budget an overall grade of B+ in an op-ed published by the Toronto Star on Wednesday. Page argued the budget had a solid strategy to meet the crisis of the U.S. trade disruption, one that warrants steeper deficits, but he said he feared Ottawa has lost some of its fiscal buffer to absorb the next economic shock. Yeah, I mean, if you are going to go a bit more into debt in order to um, spearhead some capital projects, it does remove some buffer room that comes with the territory. That's the trade off that you're making. The Conservatives have called on the Liberals to appoint Jakes to a full term as PBO, arguing the 6 month interim period gives Ottawa the power to fire him over his criticisms. A spokesperson for the Prime Minister's office confirmed Jakes is able to apply for the permanent position. This is a empty whine from conservatives. The positions are called interim for a reason, right? The job listing says Ottawa is looking for someone familiar with fiscal policy and the inner workings of Parliament. The listing says the successful candidate must show sound judgment, tact, and discretion and communicate about complex policy issues in a neutral way. Again, me ouch. The PBO job comes with a salary range of 225,300 to 265,000. The application review will start on December 8th. And that's thanks to reporting from Craig Lord of the Canadian Press. Other data that came in for Canada, uh, some pretty good data in a way, having with our employment. According to Rabinovich of Global News, Canada's job market bounced back slightly in October as the national unemployment rate fell for the first time in 3 months. Statistics Canada reported last Friday that the unemployment rate fell to 6.9% in October and 67,000 net new jobs were added to the labor market. October's unemployment rate fell 0.2% from 7.1% in September and matched the 6.9% reading for July. This was also the second straight month with more jobs added to the labor market than were lost amid the ongoing trade war and the impact of U.S. tariffs on Canada's economy. While jobs were added in September, the overall unemployment rate remained flat at the same 7.1% seen in August. Some economists see this as good news overall, but still remain cautious given the uncertainty of the trade war and how tariff policies may evolve. Quote, a surprising bounce. The labor force survey continued its wild ride of late, coming in on the upside of the second straight month after losses over the summer. Employment rose faster than population growth, said Brendan Bernard, senior economist at Indeed. Quote, as year end approaches, it'll be tough to expect more from the labor market beyond muddling through, without more material improvement in the broader economy. But for now, still low layoff rates are keeping the situation stable as we wait for the economic situation to shift. Statistics Canada says most of the employment was for men aged 25 to 54 years old, with 33,000 jobs added, and youth aged 15 to 24, adding 21,000 positions. That's pretty good. Youth unemployment in October was measured at 14.1%, which was a drop of 0.6% from September's reading of 14.7%. This also marked the first decline in the youth unemployment rate since February after reaching a 15-year high in September, excluding the 2020 and 2021 COVID-19 pandemic years. Despite the decline, the data shows unemployment for younger Canadians remains more than double the national average. A report by Desjardins, released in September, described Canada's youth unemployment levels being consistent with that of a recession. Quote, I worry that we're headed towards a crisis where we risk losing a generation of very talented workers who have skills and who want to start contributing to Canadian society and exercising their knowledge and those skills, says Vas Bednar, managing director at the Canadian Shield Institute for Public Policy. Quote, is it really that we're hearing from employers that young people don't have the skill sets that they're looking for? Or are we hearing from employers that they're just not looking for young people? Prime Minister Mark Carney's budget aims to tackle youth unemployment with nearly $1.6 billion in new funding for various government bodies over the next 3 years to support over 175,000 new jobs for younger Canadians. In October, Statistics Canada reports wholesale and retail trade led the job gains with 41,000 new jobs, followed by 30,000 positions added in transportation and warehousing, and 25,000 in information, culture, and recreation, and 7,600 in utilities. Most of the jobs added were in the private sector, led by an additional 85,000 part time roles, while full time positions shrank by 19,000, according to the report, which was concerning to at least one economist. So that is a little bit of a qualifying factor in these numbers that while the overall employment did increase, it was mostly part time roles, and full time positions did shrink by 19,000. So, the thing is here is that in terms of number of people that are employed full time, yes, that goes down, but the unemployment rate goes down because the total number of people working and the total number of hours they are working is going up despite that loss. There is enough part time employment to create more hours of work overall for more people, even despite the fact that 19,000 jobs were lost. And in those sectors, retail trade, transportation, warehousing, information, culture, and recreation, those are all um, areas of trade that benefit from Canadians spending more at home. So, for example, Canadians that are traveling abroad less and traveling more within Canada are, when those dollars are spent in Canada, those dollars continue to circulate in Canada and create additional economic activity. So, this is the type of stuff. These are the sectors that would sort of indicate that it is what we are doing as Canadians to stand up to the United States and to show resilience and faith in our own economy that are generating this employment. And that's according to Klaus Kellerman, who I follow a lot here on to get some economic information to bring to you. Quote, the overall gain in jobs was mostly driven by three sectors: retail, wholesale, transportation, storage, and infoculture recreation. These tend not to be relatively high paying jobs, and they tend to lean on part time workers relative to some other sectors, says Derek Holt, Vice President and Head of Capital Markets Economics at Scotiabank. Enter the fact that part time jobs drove the overall report with a gain of 85,000, while full time jobs fell by 19,000. That too is not great quality signal. Meanwhile, employment declined in the most. So let's try that again. Meanwhile, employment declined the most in construction, with 15,000 jobs lost in October. The agency also points out from January to October 2025, employment in goods producing industries, which includes manufacturing and construction, fell by a net 54,000 jobs, or 1.3%. Goods producing industries including lumber, are one of the most impacted by U.S. tariffs, in addition to that of steel, aluminum, auto, and energy products. So this is good data, and it would seem as well, if I remember correctly, other reports that I read showed that wage growth um, is also higher than inflation. The CPI, I think, believe wage growth is at 3.5% on an annualized basis, which is higher than the CPI, but is not that much higher than inflation, 3.4. So it's still good to see wages increasing faster than the rate of inflation. It's helping us catch up for that galloping inflation that we had during the COVID time and post-COVID and all that kind of stuff. But given that, again, food inflation is a little higher, this only goes so far. Now, it would seem that economists had expected a loss of 20,000 jobs and the unemployment rate to rise from 7.1% to 7.2%. So it's a 0.3% swing in the positive direction from which was expected, at least according to consensus estimates published by the Bank of Montreal. Quote, it is too early to tell, but this could end up being the first sign of recovery for an economy that's been reeling, Desjardins economist Royce Mendez wrote in a client note. This reinforces our revised call that the Bank of Canada moves back to the sidelines next month, leaving rates unchanged after easing in September and October. Other observers generally agree that the Ontario Labour Force, sorry, I, Ontario Labour Voice. I'm talking like my character in the show. Uh, Other observers generally agree that the Ontario Labour Force survey data point to a hold in December from the central bank. CIBC economist Andrew Grantham wrote that, quote, overall, today's data is supportive of the Bank of Canada's thinking that interest rates are now low enough to stimulate the economy, and we continue to forecast no more rate cuts from here. Let's see. Still, economists were quick to caution that the upbeat headline masks softer details beneath the surface, which we talked about. While the headline gain looked strong, several said it did not mark a true turnaround. TD's Leslie Preston said the report shows, quote, some resilience but not strength, adding that overall job market conditions remain soft. Mendez also noted that hiring was somewhat narrowly based, focused in the retail and transportation warehouse industries. Um, According to BMO chief economist Douglas Porter, this provincial strength in Ontario might have a temporary cause, suggesting Ontario's gains, particularly in information, culture, and recreation, and accommodation and food, may have received a bump from the Blue Jays' playoff run. So there you go. Wages were up 3.5% from a year earlier to an average of $37.06 an hour. So my memory was correct. I did remember that. Let's see, what else do we have in here? So those are people we've quoted before. Um, and yes, there we go. The unemployment for youth, that is good. And yes, that's all the additional information. I went to get additional information from John McFarlane, who's a senior reporter at Yahoo Finance Canada, in this one, because I knew that there was just a little bit more than what the previous article. So now you have all the information, kits and cubs, with regard to that. So you see, you have all this additional activity going around, all this additional data, and these projects announcement is going to come and bolster all of this. So it's been positive overall, kits and cubs. And so far, it looks like, again, the prime minister has a plan. He's putting it into place. And he's right now, at least as things are going now, he's seeming to have very little difficulty in putting the plan together and having series of announceables on a regular basis that keep that narrative going in the public sphere. And that's really what he needs. And hopefully that can continue so that we get it to a point where the zone is starting to be flooded with these type of announcements to sort of drown out the constant drumbeat of negativity that is coming from the conservative side of the ledger, because there's only so many times you can say that Canada's broken and this is not a real project, it's just a list, whatnot, as new things keep on being announced and projects keep on moving forward. And of course, in addition to that, people from the economic sector and from the business sector and from the banking sector all expressing various degrees of either enthusiasm or approval for how things are going at the moment. This is good stuff because, like I said, the prime minister is only one man and he can only do so much talking. And yes, he does have a government team, but what you need are people from the various sectors that are involved, announcing various projects and being upbeat about the project and the plan. Because, as we mentioned, around the time of the election, these things that Prime Minister Carney wants to do are pretty long horizon projects before we see massive, massive benefits. So, right now, we just want to make sure that there is some economic activity and there is some employment. And there is, at this stage, right, when you're doing planning and all that type of stuff, there are some jobs that are created by that, but it's still not, the, the boots on the ground, shovels in the ground and all that kind of stuff, jobs that people like to see. So, they need to ladder the portfolio of projects in terms of deadlines so that there's stuff that continues. And again, with the housing projects, because you've got Build Homes Canada, you need these projects announced, and then you need to see some of those happen, particularly with the modular housing. That could be a little quicker, and things that you can point to and say, hey, we got that going. Then you got the whole defense stuff on another side of it, and you need some announcements on that. Funny, I should mention that because we do have some developments with regard to defense. And this is some pretty big news. Now, some of you kits and cubs have been following what's been going on, and you did mention it in the chat. And I've had an article open for a while that I'd been wanting to read in, and there just hasn't been any time. And there's been development on that since. But in early November, on the 3rd, it was announced by CTV that the King and Queen of Sweden were scheduled to visit Canada this month. On the 3rd, they were saying here, the Governor General had announced that the visit would happen. King Carl XVI Gustav and Queen Sylvia would be arriving for a state visit on November 18th and leave just 2 days later. The Swedish royal court says the two countries will launch a strategic partnership during the visit, and the delegation will include the country's defense and energy ministers, as well as representatives of 30 companies and agencies. While an agenda for the trip has yet to be released, Rideau Hall, the official residence of the Governor General, said the royal couple will make stops in Ottawa and Montreal, attending events meant to, quote, deepen the ties between Canada and Sweden. Calling Sweden an, quote, important economic and security partner, the news release said the visit is meant to strengthen political defense and trade relations between the countries with emphasis on Canada's Arctic foreign policy. The visit comes as Swedish defense firm Saab considers assembling Gripen fighter jets in Canada. Sweden joined NATO military alliance last year, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine has boosted its collaboration with Canada on issues such as disinformation and dark vessels. Background information provided with the announcement included the tariffs have been eliminated on most of Sweden's exports to Canada as part of the Canada EU Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement. Yay! While recent, that again is a development, a big one, right? When Pierre Poilièvre says this leads to nothing. Yeah, the elimination, we may not be making ground with eliminating tariffs within the United States or reducing them, but we are making ground with many of the other nations with which we intend to trade when we are looking to diversify. You have to remember, kits and cubs, right? We've got three sort of big blocks. We've got India, we've got China, we've got the United States, all of whom with which we need to do business, but all of whom we have some shaky relations with, to put it mildly. So there is another push among a whole bunch of world's other nations, Canada, Sweden, the EU countries, some of the ASEAN nations, Indonesia, Thailand, some of the Mercosur nations in South America, to sort of come together and create a global trading bloc amongst those nations that do follow rules. And if we can increase, I mean, when you put all those nations together, that is one big, powerful bloc, right? And it's not just a single behemoth nation block. And if we can create that type of additional buffer zone, that regardless of what China or India or the United States might do on any given day in a fit of peak, we still have this big block amongst us to help temper whatever damage they could do to any one of us. It's almost, I heard it described yesterday as sort of an Article 5, but for trade. So, and Canada is very much in the lead with regard to that, not only in terms of bringing all these countries together, because one of the major things that might happen is that the bloc of CPTPP nations and the bloc of the CETA nations, the Canada EU Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, could come together to form one bloc. And Canada, I believe, is the only nation that is a member of both. The other one is that because of Canada's very strategic position when it comes to critical minerals and the way that China is dominating the market and setting the rules for the entire market, if there's a whole bunch of countries that can come together with regard to an agreement on trade on critical minerals, yes, and that could create sort of a separate pole from China, where if China just decides to decide, I'm cutting off your supply from that, well, we're not up the creek without a paddle. And Canada is actually leading that initiative worldwide. So when you have the conservatives say that nothing's going on and we're doing anything, we have no power and we have no sway. That's not exactly true. While recent changes to U.S. tariff policy were not directly mentioned, the visit follows several international trips taken by Prime Minister Mark Carney and other officials in the months since the federal election in an effort to increase trade with other partners. In September, the Canadian press reported that Carney alone had taken a total of 13 foreign visits since March. Guy's busy. Last week, he and Trade Minister Maninder Sidhu met with their Chinese counterparts in discussions that included trade and other topics. Those meetings were held amid the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum, during which Carney said he apologized to US President Donald Trump over an anti tariff ad that prompted the American leader to cut off trade talks in late October. So that's with files from the Canadian Press by Kendra Mangione and Tammy Ibrahimpour. Well, there have been some developments with regard to that, kids and cubs. And this came out yesterday in CBC. And it says here, a few days before the federal budget was tabled, the CEO of Swedish, boy, a few days before the federal budget was tabled, the CEO of Swedish industrial giant Saab flew to Ottawa to meet with the country's top bureaucrats. Mm. Fueling the sense a deal is brewing between the Canadian government and the military manufacturer. And what a wonderful occasion to announce that such a deal has been struck then at a visit with the royals from Sweden. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen. I'm just saying that as a PR guy, what a wonderful opportunity for maximum visibility of such an announcement were it ready to happen at that time. We'll see. A few days before the federal budget was tabled, the CEO of Swedish industrial giant Saab flew to Ottawa to meet with the country's top bureaucrats, fueling the sense a deal is brewing between the Canadian government and the military manufacturer. Sources said the fact that Michael Sabia, the clerk of the Privy Council, made room in his tight agenda on October 31st to meet with Mikael Johansson highlights Canada's interest in acquiring European military equipment as well as beefing up its domestic production capacity. Even clearer signals are expected when Swedish King Carl XVI Gustaf and Queen Sylvia lead a business and political delegation to Canada between the 18th and 20th. The state visit will include Sweden's Deputy Prime Minister Ebba Busch and its Defense Minister Pål Jonsson, in addition to more than 60 members of the country's business community. Okay, it's grown because on November 3rd, only 30 members were expected. Now it's doubled. This looks like it will be a big deal. Remember the days, those of you who are old enough, when Jacques Chrétien used to have these Team Canada missions and would go abroad with a whole bunch of business people to drum up business? It sounds like Sweden is pulling one of these here. One of the world's richest families, the Wallenbergs, will be represented. Their holdings include major participation in telecommunications giants Ericsson and Saab, which is a large industrial group that produces Gripen fighter jets and the Global Eye surveillance aircraft. With stops in Ottawa and Montreal, the visit will aim to strengthen Canada's military alliance with fellow NATO and Arctic country. Boy, I'm having trouble again today. Let's try that sentence again. With stops in Ottawa and Montreal, the visit will aim to strengthen Canada's military alliance with a fellow NATO and Arctic country shortly after the Carney government promised $82 billion in new defense spending. The delegation will make a stop at Bombardier's facilities in Montreal, highlighting the company's desire to work with Saab on the production of Gripens for the Canadian market, as well as potential clients such as Ukraine. Remember that we mentioned that a few days ago, that it seems that there may be a project to supply up to 150 of these planes to Ukraine, and that a lot of them could be built in Canada. Quote, Saab wants to do significantly more work in Canada in the near term. Saab views Canada as an ideal partner with the right, highly skilled workforce to support a massive growth in global demand, said Simon Carroll, president of Saab Canada. Both countries need each other, especially in this complex global landscape, added Christina Kagren from Business Sweden, a group that organized the commercial delegation. And the thing that's interesting about this, too, is that Saab also makes cars. So, if we are developing a good relationship with Saab, who knows down the road, maybe some of these uh, auto plants that Trump wants to destroy so that they can go to the United States, um, you know, maybe Saab would like to start building some of its vehicles for the North American market here in Canada rather than building them in the United States. Saab does sell cars in the United States, but maybe they would like to make their North American destined cars in Canada moving forward. You never know. It could happen. The backdrop to the visit is the erosion of the Canada-US ties since President Donald Trump came into power in July. In March, the Carney government announced plans to review its purchase of 88 F-35 fighter jets from the American firm Lockheed Martin over Trump's repeated attacks against Canadian sovereignty. Ottawa is still committed to buying at least 16 F-35s, but there's growing talk of a mixed fleet composed both of F-35s and Gripens for the Royal Canadian Air Force. Experts say the Gripen E costs much less to fly compared to the F-35, but there would be additional costs to maintain and operate two fleets, particularly in terms of pilot training and infrastructure. I think that's a cost that we are okay with taking on because, even though there is more pilot training infrastructure and more maintenance and operation, if all of that is done in Canada, it still means more jobs here. Since the F-35 review was launched, Bombardier executives have met 3 times with Innovation Minister Mélanie Joly in May, June, and July, according to the Federal Lobbyists Registry. In August, Joly took the initiative of organizing a visit to the Saab factory that manufactures Gripen E fighter jets in Linköping, Sweden. For Canada, the state visit by King Carl is seen as an opportunity to strengthen its European partnerships. Quote, the question is whether we want to be closer to the United States or do we want to be closer to the Europeans, said a senior government source. Radio Canada granted confidentiality to some sources who were not authorized to speak publicly about discussions between Saab and Bombardier on the federal government's strategy. Political scientist Justin Massey said he understands Canada's efforts to diversify its alliances. Quote, when we partner with a country, it's because we believe we can operate with that partner for years, perhaps even decades, and that partner will be reliable and interested in a win-win relationship, said Massey, who is a professor at the Université du Québec à Montréal. And that's why it's extremely damaging to Canada-US relations when you have an American president waging tariff wars against his neighbors. According to Carleton University political scientist Philippe Lagacé, Sweden is a model for Canada. Quote, we have many lessons to learn from Sweden, not only at the military level, but also in regards to the defense industry. The country has built an autonomous industry that has had great success internationally. Approximately three-quarters of Canada's military purchases currently come from the United States. In a bid to reduce this reliance, the federal government has been cultivating alliances in such countries as Sweden, as well as Germany and South Korea, which are the final bidders to supply Canada with a new fleet of 12 submarines. According to several sources, the Carney government has a soft spot for the Global Eye aircraft to meet its plans to acquire Canadian Airborne Early Warning and Control AEWC capability. Saab detection and radar systems are already installed on Global 6,500 business jets manufactured by Bombardier in Toronto. Oh, that is an interesting little bit of detail here that indeed would lead one to believe that we could be leaning towards Saab. In fact, sources said Saab officials have been holding high-level meetings recently with the Ontario government of Premier Doug Ford. Another option on the table, once again using the Global 6,500, is the Phoenix AEWC aircraft manufactured in collaboration with L3 and Israel Aerospace Industries, while a third contract competitor is Boeing's E-7 Wedgetail. Traditionally, the Canadian Armed Forces have primarily sourced their aeronautical equipment from American companies such as Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Sikorsky. Boeing emphasizes that it has been present in Canada for more than 100 years and has contributed over $15 billion in industrial benefits to the country's economy. It added that its E-7 Wedgetail has been sold to the armed forces of Australia, South Korea, Turkey, and the United States, and the United Kingdom. Now, this is the Boeing sale pitch. We've contributed over $15 billion in industrial benefits over 100 years. Not particularly impressive. Just saying. It's not the flex you think it is. Quote, we stand ready to support the Royal Canadian Air Force's capability needs, said Alan Meisinger, president of Boeing Canada. Still, Canada could increase its autonomy by diversifying its sources of military equipment. Quote, the United States and probably even the presidents will put pressure on Canada to acquire American capabilities to contribute to the defense of the continent. That said, we must also recognize that, as a sovereign country, we must be able to make our own choices and take our own decisions, said Lagacé. As part of its bid, Saab said it is ready to share its intellectual property with Canadian companies and allow them to join its international production chain. Sweden's willingness to share its technologies could offer a long-term advantage, Massey said, especially if Canada participates in the development of the next generations of fighter jets. So there, how about that? That's a pretty massive development here. So all this news together gives us a sense of how things are moving along. And right now, it's looking relatively positive. Uh, I have a feeling that there will be a lot of good news coming out of those particular meetings when they finally do happen. So I'm very excited about this. Let's see here. It seems that, according to the Globe and Mail, there might be more information about two of the projects that are being considered for announcement today. So I just spotted this. So I'm going to go take a look and see if there's any additional information that I can get to you with regard to that here, kids and cubs. Let's see. This is from, okay, 19 hours ago. So perhaps that is it. I'll just take a look and see if I can draw it up for you. I can indeed. Okay. So this is according to Justine Hunter of the Globe and Mail. The federal government's Major Projects Office will add the planned North Coast transmission line in British Columbia and an expansion of the NM Nouveau Monde graphite mine in Quebec to its list of nation building developments. Prime Minister Mark Carney is expected to announce on Thursday in northern BC, a source has told the Globe and Mail. The Globe is not identifying the source because they were not authorized to disclose the deals publicly. Mr. Carney told reporters earlier this week he would be announcing the second round of nation building projects in Prince Rupert, an important northern BC port city that is seen by many people as a crucial node for diversifying overseas trade. However, the location for the Prime Minister's event has now been changed to Terrace. The British Columbia government has committed to building the $6 billion hydroelectric transmission line from Prince George to Terrace, with shovels in the ground in 2026. It has asked the federal government to list the NCTL with the Major Projects Office to help fast track the line, which is designed to secure new private sector investments, including a string of critical mineral mines for the sparsely developed northwest corner of the province. Northern Graphite Corp has been seeking funds to extend the life of the North America's only operational graphite mine. Counting the NCTL, um, what's NCTL again? North Coast Transmission Line. Okay. Counting the North Coast Transmission Line and the graphite mine, Mr. Carney is now expected to add half a dozen mining and energy developments to the major projects list on Thursday, sources have told the Globe. And yeah, that's about all the additional information that's there. So yeah, no particularly additional information really in this article from the Globe and Mail. All right. So that is what we're expecting on the trade front today and the economic front. And so there's probably going to be plenty of news tomorrow's show with regard to the announcements. Moving on, kits and cubs, to the second part of this morning's program. Um, we here have been getting a little bit of news because Pierre Poilièvre yesterday uh, decided for himself to actually address certain things that have been going on with his caucus, the essentially the bottom fallen out of his leadership for all intents and purposes. And yesterday, when I presented basically story time with the conservative frat house, um, there's one thing that was very important to note in all of that was going on, and that was that Chris D'Entremont was speaking in his own voice the entirety of the time. But since all of this happened, um, all the communication from the conservative side of the ledger has been coming either from other MPs, from Melissa Lantsman. There was this wonderful video clip the other day of her, because remember we showed the interview with her where she was sitting like this, and gee, I hope we're going to talk about the budget, and not wanting to really talk about what was going on with Chris d'Entremont himself. And then we found out that Matt Genereux was resigning altogether. And then, the particular clip showed that Melissa Lantsman didn't really have so much to say now that the party had lost a second one, and no real desire to sit in front of the camera and do that thing, that really off-putting, haughty, pompous, entitled, and arrogant act, and constantly attacking media act that she does. But yeah, so be it. But this whole dueling stories thing was a statement written, still not the leader. Still not the leader. And it tells you something. It really, really tells you something when the person that's being the target of a smear, Chris d'Entremont, is willing to go out in front of the camera and actually talk about it and give interviews. And the people doing the smearing are doing it through intermediaries, or doing it in written form only. In fact, we have Melissa Lantsman complaining here on Twitter. In an alternate universe, the media will spend the next week focused on the growing cracks in the Liberal caucus as one of their own MPs openly speaks out against Mark Carney's budget. My only question after this video is, does he vote for it? That's referring to a video by Nathaniel Erskine Smith talking about his views for the budget. And the thing is, here, we'll show you a little clip of that, since we're on that. And Nate Erskine Smith is known, people call him a maverick, to which Nate Erskine Smith frequently responds. It's like, yeah, sometimes I vote against the government and that type of stuff, or I criticize the government, but I mean, like, I voted with them, 92% of the time. I mean, if that makes me a maverick because it's 92 versus 96 or 97, call me a maverick, I guess. He doesn't really see it, and he's quite amused by all of it. But yes, Nathaniel Erskine Smith did criticize the budget. Now, of course, Nathaniel Erskine Smith is probably setting himself up to perhaps take another crack at the leadership of the Ontario Liberal Party, given that they passed him on the first time and, well, it didn't quite work out. So you might be going, hey, how do you like me now? My ideas are no less good than they were when I brought them up and when you were impressed with them the first time. And I'm still here. But the Conservatives are trying to take the fact that he was critical of the budget as a sign, and that there's like some massive turmoil within the Liberal government. And oh my God, it's so unfair that the press is not covering it like they're covering turmoil in our side. So let's see this incredible harsh criticism that Nathaniel Erskine Smith has for the budget.
First, stalled climate action, cutting tree planting, moving away from an emissions cap, winding down greener homes. No new money for climate action. On housing, it falls short of these specific promises in our platform, and it unfortunately falls well short of the wartime effort that many of us thought we'd deliver. The budget adds $140 billion in new spending over 5 years, $90 billion net after savings, and only 36% of the net new spending is capital. My kids shouldn't pay for today's military or for me to save $400 of income taxes. We see the budget commit to a new inefficient fossil fuel subsidy for LNG facilities. We do not need more public dollars chasing fossil fuels. Worse, we see major cuts of over $2.5 billion over 4 years to international development assistance. Overall, the budget meets the moment in part, but fairly, it does not live up to its promise of generational investments. First, stalled climate action.
All right. So this, of course, is the conservative version of that. You will notice that there are just certain sentences taken out of an overall video spliced together to give the impression that it's bad, 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 bad. I remember distinctly Pierre Poilièvre having somebody from CTV fired for the exact same thing. Do you remember that recently? Do you remember that? Hmm? Yeah, I think there was a Pierre had a video. Um, um, can't remember. Yes, this was September 26th, 2024. CTV staff. CTV says staffers who altered Poilievre clip no longer work for its news team. CTV has dropped two members of its news team after an altered clip of Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre went to air in a recent national news report, according to a statement from the network posted to the social media. The network said these actions violate our editorial standards and are unacceptable. Hmm, interesting. The controversy stemmed from a CTV news report that first aired um, at some point at around that time, and it included an altered clip of Poilievre in a recent media scrum with reporters. The Conservative said CTV spliced together his words in a way that gave the impression that Poilievre was introducing a non-confidence motion, which would bring on an early election because he wants to do away with the Liberal government's fledgling dental care program. In his scrum with reporters, Poilievre said, "That's why it's time to put forward a motion for a carbon tax election." On the CTV broadcast, Poilievre was heard saying, "That's why we need to put forward a motion." Those words came right after the network's reporter read from a script that said there are questions about dental care's future, with the non-confidence motion looming. So, conservatives who got apoplectic when CTV spliced together two moments of a Pierre Poilievre moment uh, and made it look like he seemed he was saying something he didn't, are now perfectly okay running with this type of clip of Nate Earthsmith. Now, let's point out some obvious contradictions. Or obvious, not so contradictions, but flaws in the conservative reasoning. Number one, Nate Erskine Smith expressed criticism of the government's budget, but he still intends to vote for it. So, in other words, Nathaniel Erskine Smith said, here are some areas, in my opinion, in which the budget could be better, but it is still good enough that I will vote for it. Now, compare and contrast. And nobody in the Liberal Party called him a liar, a rat, or a snake. Now compare and contrast what's going on the conservative side, where they had one MP defect and one just straight up quit, and all the things that they're saying about the one that defected. The conservatives want you to believe that these two situations are equivalent and deserving of equal coverage from the press. The conservatives, the frat house conservative, who love to tell stories, want you to sit back and listen to the tale about how there's so much turmoil and dissension in the liberal ranks because Nathaniel Erskine Smith had some well thought out and reasoned criticisms of the budget, suggestions for how it could be better, perfectly in line with everything we know to be true of him, perfectly in line with values that would be held by his constituents in the beaches in downtown Toronto. Well, downtown Toronto. You know what I mean. Um, yeah, right. These are exactly the same conservatives. This is some um, whiny, whiny ass uh, coping here from the conservatives. Ah, man. So, deflections aside, the question was finally put to Pierre about what was going on. And of course, at a time like this, when you lose two MPs, um, you know, uh, you might want to take a moment to pause, reflect, do a little introspection, maybe go around to your most trusted people and, you know, do I smell or something? Do I got something between my teeth? Something? Yeah. But Pierre is his own advisor, and while Pierre is a man who goes his own way, MGTOW. So, given the fact that you have lost two MPs, and there are rumors abound that there are at least perhaps 20 more who may not be particularly enamored with you at the moment, Pierre Poilièvre, and you have had a terrible month in which you've made a whole bunch of ill-advised statements and decisions. Is it possible that there might be something on your end that you may need to change a little bit? Well, let's see what Pierre has to say about stuff like that.
You lost two MPs the week of the budget. One cited your leadership as a reason for leaving. I just want to put Carney and the Liberals to the side here, just as you personally.
Of course you do.
Does this say anything about your leadership? Have you maybe?
The volume on this doesn't seem to be all that great, kits and cubs. So let me see if I can find for you one that might have a little more oomph to it here, because that was even I, through my headphones, have had difficulty hearing that. And there is like no noise elsewhere going on at home. So if I can't hear it, you really probably can't. Um, so I will. I'm so sorry. I thought I had a better copy there, which is a shame because it kind of disturbs the flow of the show here. So hopefully I will be able to find something else for you here with that quote. But I think you know where it is I am going with this. Pierre Poilièvre is not a man who is particularly known for his ability to pivot and especially take criticism, like anyway, at all. So you could suspect that he would be the type of person that would bristle at this type of suggestion that perhaps he had done something wrong and that perhaps he has a thing or two to learn or a thing or two to improve upon. Now, let's start here instead while I look for it. This is in the Calgary Herald. Pierre Poilièvre, and this is Rick Bell. Pierre Poilièvre is back in his hometown of Calgary, and he tells new hounds of his younger days, delivering the Calgary Sun and even gives your humble scribbler a shout out. But nobody has ever said Poilievre is not ready to rumble, and this day doesn't take long for the Conservative leader to drop the gloves. A CBC reporter asked Poilievre what he thinks of a comment where someone said the party Poilievre leads is being run like a frat house. The comment created quite a stir because the person behind the comment is a guy by the name of Chris d'Entremont, a member of Parliament who just left the Conservatives to join Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberals. Poilievre, are you with CBC, by the way? So you know where this is going, right? Yes, is the reply. Poilievre, okay, right. And then Rick Bell, we know where this is going. We know where this movie is going. The CBC reporter asks if d'Entremont comments could lead to other MPs leaving the Conservative benches. Poilievre talks about how the CBC had to correct falsehoods in their coverage of his defection story. He does not elaborate. Then the Conservative leader turns the tables on the CBC reporter and asks him a question. Poilievre was not eating an apple at the time. Ooh, ouch. If you were in a different solar system a couple of years ago and haven't heard the Poilievre apple story, just Google it. Poilievre then reads recent quotes from the Conservative director MP harshly criticizing Carney and asks the reporter if he thinks the defector was telling the truth. CBC reporter, are you asking me? Poilievre, yes. Reporter, are you going to answer my question? Poilievre says he did answer. He always says this. And the CBC report was wrong. That is the Conservative position, and they put out a statement. Again, Poilievre quotes the Conservative MP who defected to the Liberals and his recent harsh criticisms of Carney. He asked the reporter if he agrees with the MP. The jousting continues. The CBC reporter asks what he thought d'Entremont meant when he said the Conservative Party was being run like a frat house and whether that would lead to more Conservative MPs leaving for Carney's Liberals. Poilievre, no, so I answered your question. This is the tip of the iceberg. Poilievre also takes aim at CBC and saying they are trying to comfort us by writing a story about a store where you could save money buying food after its best before date. Quote, now you can buy rotten food and you'll be able to afford it. So that is the CBC solution to liberal food price inflation. This is so stupid. CTV, you're up. A CTV reporter asked Poilievre if he has reflected on his leadership style. The quick answer from Poilievre, no. My plan is to continue to lead and be the only leader in the country fighting for an affordable Canada. That is my agenda. If you think Poilievre is going to do a political makeover, think again. He quotes Liberal MP Nate Erskine-Smith and that individual's criticism of the Carney Liberal budget. Then Poilievre cracks open the sarcasm to illustrate what he sees as the bias, the double standard in much of the press. We see turmoil in the Liberals. I know there will be wall-to-wall coverage on CTV of this turmoil. A Liberal MP criticizing his own budget days before the vote. Poilievre to the CTV reporter. I know you'll be camped outside waiting to get comment from him. I know you've been chasing Carney down ways to find out what he has to say. Poilievre says Liberal buddies like Stephen Guilbeault and Jonathan Wilkinson are not happy with Carney. The Conservative leader says he looks forward to the relentless coverage you will have of dissent within the Liberal Party. I will be tuning in tonight to watch your newscast. Cue the Conservative chuckling. Beyond the political intrigue, the inside baseball played in Ottawa, that faraway place where your tax dollars don't go to die, there is this real world of jobs gained and jobs lost in parts of the country mistreated. Will Carney deliver a new pipeline from Alberta to the West Coast? The Prime Minister is making an announcement Thursday. Caller Poilievre a skeptic. Quote, the Liberals would like the pub that has the sign on the wall saying free beer tomorrow. You come back the next day and it still says free beer tomorrow. And you keep coming back day after day for the promise of free beer, and the price of beer continues to rise and rise and rise. They keep telling us something is going to happen tomorrow. Carney has been Prime Minister for 8 months, promising to move at unimaginable speed. Poilievre tells Carney to just get out of the way. Get out of the way, Mark Carney, and do it now. We don't need Mark Carney to put on a hard hat and do another photo. Oh my God. Captain Cosplay. Boots, not suits. We don't need Mark Carney to put on a hard hat and do another photo op. That's my shtick. Poilievre also runs down a list of Carney broken promises, including the outright political fraud known as the Liberal Elbows Up campaign. And yet here we are with Poilievre and Carney and yet here we are, and Poilievre, not Carney, is very much on the media hot seat. So yeah, not particularly impressive sortie from Poilievre here. So yeah, apparently has a plan. And his plan is to keep on. My plan is to continue to lead and be the only leader in the country that's fighting for an affordable Canada. Yeah. Okay. Uh, that's nice, muffin top, but most plans don't survive first contact. So good luck with that, eh? All right. This here might be the clip that I am looking for, and it might be with proper. Okay, well, it's much better volume, or slightly better volume. Hopefully, it will be loud enough for you, kids and cubs.
You lost 2 MPs the week of the budget. One cited your leadership as a reason for leaving. I just want to put Carney and the Liberals to the side here, just as you personally.
Of course you do.
Does this say anything about your leadership? Have you maybe reflected on your leadership style moving forward?
No, my plan is to continue to lead and be the only leader in the country that's fighting for an affordable Canada, where our people who work hard can afford a home and food. That is my agenda. And I will just quote Mr. d'Entremont when he speaks about Mark Carney. He says, after 6 months under a new Prime Minister who promised financial discipline, Canadians are still waiting. He said that he would be judged by the cost of groceries at the store. Well, Canadians are judging him, and they are not impressed. He said this only a few months ago. Since the Liberals came to power, food prices are up 40%. We have heard it many times here today. It is deliberate and it is unacceptable. It is inhumane, said Mr. d'Entremont, for a G7 country. So he said that Liberal food price inflation under Mark Carney was inhumane, and I couldn't agree more. And I feel badly for the inhumane conditions, to use his own words, that he is now supporting for his own constituents.
You lost
So,
2
yeah, a dick. He chose to be a dick. Yet again. Quelle surprise, right? I mean, especially from this guy. What a surprise. There was a segment yesterday on power and politics. And with Cubs, if you did not get to see it yourself, because the claim as well that the media has something to answer for with regard to how it covered the d'Entremont story. Of course, the falsehood is the thing about whether or not the assistant was pushed or not. Apparently, that's the hinge thing on which that makes d'Entremont the liar in all of this, and nothing he says should therefore be believed. Let's take a look at this, kids and cubs, and get fuller context.
We begin that appearance today from Conservative leader Beaver. For the first time, he took questions about one MP crossing the floor to the Liberals and another announcing their intention to resign from politics. The CBC's Kate McKenna is here to walk us through what happened. Okay, Kate, reporters have been waiting for a while to speak to Beaver about the events of the last weeks. I mean, what did we hear from the leader today?
Well, I think it's safe to say that he doubled down. You know, he was asked a handful of questions about what happened last week, what could potentially happen with his caucus, because, of course, there have been rumblings swirling around that perhaps there's more unrest within his caucus, and he stands by his leadership. He deflected most of the questions, but did say that he doesn't plan on changing his leadership style. Take a listen to what he said.
I just want to put Carney and the Liberals to the side here, just as you personally.
Of course you do.
Does this say anything about your leadership? Have you maybe reflected on your leadership style moving forward?
No, my plan is to continue to lead and be the only leader in the country that's fighting for an affordable Canada, where our people who work hard can afford a home and food. My agenda.
So he took 3 questions total on sort of caucus management issues, and in each one of them he reverted to something that Chris d'Entremont said in September in the House of Commons when he was still a Conservative MP, where he criticized the Liberal government. He repeated this multiple times. He also kind of criticized the media because Nate Erskine-Smith, a Liberal MP, put out a video where he kind of offered the budget a mixed review. And he said that there's a double standard, that we are not, journalists are not chasing him down the hallway to get answers on that, but they are with Conservatives. Take a listen to some of what he said about Chris d'Entremont and what he said in September.
Well, first of all, I just quote Mr. d'Entremont, and I will just quote Mr. d'Entremont. He said, and I'm going to quote Mr. d'Entremont, this is a quote from just a few months ago. I have a statement here from Mr. d'Entremont. He says, since the Liberals came to power, food prices have risen 40%. He said that Liberal food price inflation was inhumane. And you know what? He's right.
So this an apparent effort to discredit what d'Entremont is saying and comments he's made since crossing the floor, including that part of his rationale was Pierre Poilièvre's leadership. We did put those comments to Chris d'Entremont this afternoon. He sent us an email in which he said they are spinning. I've said what I needed to. He continues to prove my point. So the question now becomes whether or not this is enough to put this issue to rest, or whether or not Pierre Poilièvre can expect to face more questions to this effect ahead of his leadership review, ahead of the budget vote next week.
Right. I just want to point out, the audience who watched Monday would remember we did talk about Nate Erskine-Smith in his video on the show for about 15 minutes, and I invited Nate Erskine-Smith on the show today. He couldn't do it, but he is potentially coming on the program tomorrow. Conservative leader Pierre Poilièvre.
Okay, so Nate Erskine-Smith, the person who's the symbol of all the alleged turmoil within the Liberal Party, is perfectly willing to come on the show and talk about what it is that he said and his position with the party and all that type of stuff. Pierre, not so much. Interesting. Let's keep on going because there's some conversation here among the pundits. And there's, again, a lot of interesting takes here to pick up on.
Poilièvre took questions from reporters today for the first time since one MP defected to the Liberals and a second announced that he would soon be quitting politics. In response to questions about trouble in the Conservative caucus, Poilièvre repeatedly quoted the MP who crossed the floor, using his own words against him.
I just quote Mr. d'Entremont, who said, and I quote, since I first elected here in 2019, the cost of living has skyrocketed. Even then, families in West Nova, it was called at the time, but in Acadianapolis, were struggling. And I will just quote Mr. d'Entremont. After 6 months under a new Prime Minister who promised financial discipline, Canadians are still waiting. He said they'd be judged by the cost, he'd be judged by the cost at the grocery store. Well, Mr. Speaker, Canadians are judging him, and they are not impressed. I'm going to quote, since the Liberals came to power, food prices have risen 40%. It's deliberate. It's unacceptable. It's inhumane for a G7 country. This is a quote from just a few months ago, where he said that Liberal food price inflation was inhumane.
So CBC did reach out to Chris d'Entremont for comment on Poilièvre's line of attack, and d'Entremont said this: they are spinning. I've said what I needed to. He continues to prove my point. Now, at that same press conference, when asked about the state of his leadership and the unity of his caucus, Poilièvre turned the table on the reporters, criticizing them for lack of coverage on divisions in the Liberal caucus and for some corrections in the coverage of recent events.
I know that there will be wall-to-wall coverage on CTV of this turmoil, of a Liberal MP criticizing his own budget days before the vote. I know you're camped outside his office right now, waiting to get comment from him. I know you've been chasing Mark Carney down hallways to find out what he has to say. Are you with CBC, by the way?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, okay, right.
I'm just curious if you think that could lead to more MPs leaving your caucus, and what you think he means by that.
Well, first of all, CBC has had to correct the falsehoods that they put into that story. So I encourage you to tell Canadians about the falsehoods you published and explain why you did that.
Okay, just on that last point, there was an article published on Sunday on cbc.ca that was later updated with what the editors decided to call a correction. The initial version of the story accurately reported what Chris d'Entremont said in an interview on a CBC program. Chris d'Entremont later called back, clarified those comments, and the story was updated to reflect that. The correction is by Chris d'Entremont. The mistake, or the bad impression, whatever you want to say about it, was from Chris d'Entremont. It was not an editorial mistake by the CBC writer. So I just wanted to put that out there because there's lots to dig into with the power panel. And
That kind of matters, doesn't it?
Amanda Alvaro is a former Liberal Party communication strategist. Lisa Raitt is a former Conservative cabinet minister. And here with me in the studio is Jordan Leichnitz, a former NDP strategist, and Sherelle Evelyn, who is the managing editor of The Hill Times. Lisa, I wonder what you make from that. And just I should also point out, we did talk about the Nate Erskine-Smith video on the show on Monday, and Nate Erskine-Smith, he can't do it today, but he's willing to come on tomorrow. So just so you know, what do you make of what we saw from Pierre Poilièvre today, the pushback and the aggression there?
Sure. I think two things going on here. Number one, in order to refute the story out there that the problem is with Pierre's leadership, they're going to try to impeach the witness. The witness in this case, Chris d'Entremont, and they're showing prior inconsistent statements, which is a very clear tactic that's been used for many, many years, if not for all of time, in terms of making sure that you're getting your point across, that the person who said the things that really are trying to harm you can't be believed, can't be taken at their word. And they're putting out examples of it, the speech that you just showed before, and other indications of what he may have said to his constituents in the past. So that's the route they're going to take on how to deal with the Chris d'Entremont story. The other aspect with respect to the CBC reporter. Look, David, I was just for the last couple of days in the UK, and as you probably know from the news over there, the head of the BBC and the head of the BBC News have both resigned because of something that happened with respect to a Donald Trump speech way back in January. It was around January 6th, at the time of insurrection. Anyway, it would appear that they pushed two pieces of video together. They didn't separate them, made it seem that Mr. Trump was saying one thing and not the other. And they both got fired over it because it proved to be incorrect. It was, as Donald Trump says, fake news. And now Donald Trump's suing them for $1 billion. Why am I telling you this? This is a very common theme out there that people are honing in on, which is, can you trust what's happening with respect to news? Doesn't matter if it's CBC or CTV. Both of them actually got glancing blows from Poilièvre today in the press conference. But it's a theme that's happening around the world. And unfortunately, in the case of BBC, it proved to be correct.
Yes, and the Director General resigned in that one. And there is an interesting dynamic going on with the President and the media writ large. I would say that the changes in the CBC story should have been a clarification or an update, but that, I don't want to inside baseball on that too much. Amanda, your thoughts on it today? It reminded me of a year ago, the sort of pushback with reporters and stuff, as opposed to what we've seen from Mr. Poilièvre more lately.
For sure. We see these he puts on different masks at different times. I was just going to say that it harkens back to a style of politics that he had honed really well for some time, and that I think some circles, particularly of conservatives, would say, those were sort of glory days. That's when they were leading. They were 20 points ahead. And you saw this presser where he was infusing a lot of those slogans. He was getting back to the bit of the hashtag sloganeering, that communication style, which there was a time when I gave props to the Conservative Party, because I thought, you're honing in on one particular message, you're driving it home, you're making it really sticky for Canadians. But the problem is that was a year ago, and what we've learned from it, what we've seen in a lot of conservative communication styles, and the master of it is obviously Trump, is that Canadians have already refused that, right? And what we don't see when Poilièvre talks is we don't see any accountability. If he's not blaming the Liberals, he's blaming the media. He refuses to take any accountability for the fact that he lost that 20-point lead, for the fact that he lost the election, his own writing, and now members of his own party. He actually refused to answer questions about why those members defected. This is a style of politics that may have worked a year ago, but I think Canadians are really looking for politicians who are willing to work together, who are coming to the table with some ideas, some fresh thinking, some solutions, and leaving the slogans at home.
Right. Right. Just to be clear, only one has defected. The other has announced her resignation, though did have meetings with the Prime Minister and his staff, we're told. Look, just on that point, I want to play. Poilièvre was also asked today if this turmoil in his caucus has prompted him to reflect on his leadership style. Take a listen to the question and the answer.
Have you maybe reflected on your leadership style moving forward?
No, my plan is to continue to lead and be the only leader in the country that's fighting for an affordable Canada.
Jordan, your thoughts on the events of the day?
Well, he's being very honest.
No, I mean, this is true. Like, there's no room for misunderstanding in that answer.
There's no self-reflection there. And I mean, look, I think that this is very clearly the face or the mask that he is most comfortable wearing in his public life. It's one that he returns to again and again, even though you can see that there was maybe a moment immediately after the campaign where he had a thought of potentially reflecting and changing track. It's not happening. The lessons that could have been learned from the campaign have been put aside, and he is inhabiting this character that was very successful for him when they were 20 points ahead. But the problem is that now I would argue it's probably not serving him very well at all, because although he was trying very hard, you have heard over the course of the press conference, to remain focused on the question of affordability, for example, his own talking points and his own attacks on media, his own tone actually made that really, and the news of his own refusal to reflect on his leadership made that the news. So right now you're seeing kind of an inward focus. This tone is pushing him more into that inward focus. I think it's really detrimental for them where they're at. And I think it also is troublesome for him electorally, because we've seen his negatives have continued to rise since the election. So Canadians are watching this, absolutely, not just his members. And his caucus is watching this. And you have to think that if there is a risk of further defections, that if this is the way that you react, and this is the way that, the sort of environment that you're bringing into your caucus, that's probably more likely to push people out than it is to keep them in.
But, Sherelle, he's kind of fighting two battles here, Mr. Poilièvre, in that there's the leadership review between now and the end of January, and then the broader campaign to be Prime Minister. The guy we saw at the press conference today is what the base likes, is what the base wants, and they don't want him to change, despite, how many panels you do talking about change in tactics, right? So he's kind of got the two agendas at play here.
Absolutely, and the one that's most pressing is the review that's in January. David Coletto, in the head of Peace in the Star, the head of Advocates Data, and there's a line in it that stood out to me. He said, Poilièvre isn't just liked by the Conservative Party supporters, he's close to adored. Like his supporters and his level of support is within the base is so high. It is higher than anybody else in the last few leaders were at this point in their tenure. These are the people who like what he's doing and who also were watching him during the election and potentially gravitated towards him. If you're talking about younger voters, young men, etc. It is turning off, yes, the larger electoral base. People outside of the Conservative Party, it was at only 3% of those who didn't currently support the Conservatives feel very positively about Poilièvre. Like, that is a very tiny number of people outside of the base. But doesn't have to worry right now about outside of the base, because if the government doesn't fall next week, then we have a few years to hone the messaging, poke holes at the Liberals, and get all those people who may be uneasy about his tone and say, okay, go back to what we were doing before, where you might not like me, but you might like what I'm saying and what I'm proposing for the country, and that might be what gets me over the edge. It didn't work last time once you had an opponent who wasn't Justin Trudeau, but they clearly feel some sort of way about going forward. And at the same time, it's also a matter of, like, within the caucus, it's put up or shut up, right? If you're not going to lead a mutiny against the leader, there's nobody who's going to take over. What purpose does it serve him right now to change his leadership style?
Yeah, I mean, Lisa,
So, all right. So we had the first three comments. The one from Lisa Raitt, for all intents and purposes, was pretty much irrelevant and immaterial to the current situation. Of course, we learn here throughout all of these discussions that this big mistake that and falsehoods or claims that is the part of the media is really the result of the media accurately reporting that which Chris d'Entremont said, and then Chris d'Entremont recalling the media and saying, you know what, that statement I made, it's probably a little imprecise. This is probably actually more accurate. And then them taking that information and then publishing it, admitting that, hey, the person clarified his statements, so therefore we are issuing the clarification. Pierre wants you to believe that that's the fault of the media rather than the fault of the person who initially misspoke. Again, if that's the entire thing that you've got to blame, you don't have much, right? Now, I saw some comments in the chat. How is it that using d'Entremont's own words, smearing d'Entremont, that's not where d'Entremont was smeared. That was a lazy, do your book report 5 minutes before it's due. Find me some quotes in Parliament of Chris d'Entremont stating the media lines we gave them to state, so that we can say Chris d'Entremont said. No, the smearing part is he's a rat, he's a liar, he betrayed all these people. The statements that you know, as evidenced by the fact that he crossed the floor, Chris d'Entremont is a liar, and what he's saying here is also a lie. He's just a lying liar who lies, says the party for whom lying is their stock and trade. Right? Chris d'Entremont is doing all of this because he didn't get his speaker position. He's just a poor little baby. Right? He even had one of the sycophants going, and there you have it. $51,000 is all it took for Chris d'Entremont to betray everyone. No, that's not actually accurately true, because if that were true, it would be $51,000, by the way, is the additional salary you get when you're a deputy speaker. If $51,000 was all it took for Chris d'Entremont to cross the floor, Chris d'Entremont would have the deputy speaker job and the additional $51,000 as a result of crossing the floor. He doesn't. Chris d'Entremont was not bought for $51,000. However, what is a true statement, if you want to use that $51,000 number, is because the Conservative Party was so freaking hell-bent on making sure that Chris d'Entremont did not get an extra $51,000 as a Conservative who wasn't all that pro-Pierre. The Conservatives now have this PR disaster. It's not because Chris d'Entremont wanted $51,000 so badly. It's because the Conservatives were just too damn frickin' pity to let him have it. Because he had done the job. He had done the job before. He had done it well and had the respect of MPs from all sides of the House. And that, of course, is verboten in the Pierre Poilièvre Conservative Party. That's the smearing. It's pretty obvious to anyone who has, of good faith, who has a brain that's actually tethered to their heart and soul. You have to look at everything, not just cherry pick. So, yeah. In the third comment, there was some statements about Pierre being loved among his base. That may not be as true as it once was, actually, because there was some very interesting public opinion polling that came out yesterday that make us wonder whether or not things are a little more shaky in the Poilièvre camp than one would lead one to believe. Now, first of all, Pierre clearly feels no need to reflect at all. And we have here, I believe it is an interesting opinion piece, if I'm not mistaken, from the Globe and Mail. This is from Campbell Clark, titled, "No Need to Reflect, Nothing to See, It's Not My Fault, It's Yours." Pierre Poilièvre was asked Wednesday if he had reflected on his leadership style moving forward. The simple answer was no. True to his word, Mr. Poilièvre did what he does. He attacked. He attacked Prime Minister Mark Carney, which is part of his job, and he attacked the MP who crossed the floor last week from this Conservatives to the Liberals, Chris d'Entremont, which looked like the sourest of sour grapes. Then he attacked CTV and CBC and the news organizations who dared to ask about MPs quitting his caucus. Never complain, never reconsider. Attack! What about Mr. d'Entremont's complaint that the Conservative caucus often felt more like a frat house than a serious party? Are you with CBC, by the way? Mr. Poilièvre asked. He tried to ask the reporter questions. No matter. The leader has spoken. There is no need to change or even think about it. No one should ask about it. There's nothing to see here. And as any suggestion there might be is angrily rebuffed. Gee, if that's the external face, I wonder what goes on inside caucus when someone dares to say, "Hey, Pierre, do you think maybe you could have done this better?" Is that a good strategy to buck up the Conservatives and bolster his leadership? Mr. Poilièvre promised to keep on fighting the Liberal agenda. Most current members of the party joined to vote for Mr. Poilièvre as leader, so perhaps the make no apologies, fire all cannons response is a way to unite his troops in battle. But strategy or not, it's what he does and will keep doing. Mr. Poilièvre's criticism of Mr. d'Entremont came in the form of reading quotes of the Nova Scotia MP criticizing Mr. Carney and the Liberals, and that's fair game, even if the quotes were full of the carbon copy phrases that the Conservative Party's communication office gives MPs to say. Certainly, floor crossers can be hoisted on their own past partisan statements. But Mr. d'Entremont's accusations about the party's negativity and the frat house culture, possibly in reference to the caucus leadership's clubhouse love of gotchas and wild blasts, might hit a little closer to home, even for some of Mr. Poilièvre's own MPs. Mr. Poilièvre's response to any questions about caucus departures was to repeat the same quotes or to tell a CTV reporter that his network should be covering Liberal MP Nathaniel Erskine Smith's critique of last week's federal budget. Incidentally, CTV has already aired a story about that. In the same news conference, Mr. Poilièvre made the wild-eyed claim that a leaked government report had said, quote, that Liberal policies have us on track so that Canadians will have to forage and hunt for food because they can't afford groceries. In truth, that's not what the report said. It was not a prediction, but one of the admittedly weird what-if, quote, future lives thought experiment reports occasionally published by a small government group, in this case imagining what 2040 could be like if Canada's declining social mobility gets far worse. But hey, why not claim a secret government report says the Hunger Games are on their way, unless, of course, some of your own caucus were already perturbed when you told YouTubers that former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau would be locked up if the RCMP didn't cover for him. Maybe all that stuff is better left in the frat house. Of course, Mr. Poilièvre is supposed to criticize Mr. Carney's government. You also have to expect partisans to criticize floor crossers. The Conservatives calls Mr. d'Entremont a liar, even though they accepted Liberal defectors in the past. But Mr. d'Entremont was well liked by fellow Conservative MPs. He told the CPC what sealed the deal on his floor crossing was when Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer and the party's whip Chris Workington, two senior caucus officers close to Mr. Poilièvre, barged into his office and started yelling at him. If there are other Conservative MPs irritated by the way the caucus leadership has treated them, then sending the message that the leader has no regrets might not be the best way to prevent more defections. Whatever, it's full speed ahead. With that, Mr. Poilièvre has also left himself little choice but to demand that every single one of his MPs show up for next week's confidence vote on the budget, to declare on the record they are against Mr. Carney's Liberal agenda and are with the Conservatives, and leave it to the other parties to avoid an election. There can be no reflection. When in trouble, the response must be a redoubling. That's what Mr. Poilièvre does. Now, with regard to confidence motions and wanting the government to fall, a little interesting tidbit was brought to my attention yesterday. Remember when I told you about those two votes on the motions because Pierre Poilièvre forgot to do his job and table the conservative conservative amendment to the statement, the motion to accept the budget statement, and then the Bloc presented the amendment, and then the Conservatives tried to present a sub-amendment negating the entire Bloc amendment, which was voted down. And then there was an opportunity to vote on the Bloc amendment, which was also a confidence matter, which would also take down the government. Well, here, kits and cubs, I want to show you something interesting about that vote that I missed the first time because the vote failed. But here's the thing. Pierre tells you, and is telling all his base, right, that he wants another election. He wants another election now. Let's look at the votes by political affiliation. Now, the vote lost. 30 people, MPs, voted for the Bloc's motion. There are only 22 Bloc MPs. So where did the other 8 votes in favor of the Bloc motion to make the government fall on its budget come from? The Bloc Québécois, 22 voted yay. All 7 NDP MPs wanted the government to fall and have another election right away. And the Green Party wanted the government to fall and have an election right away. So the 3 other parties represented in the House, all of their MPs voted in favor. If the Conservatives voted in favor, well then, that would defeat the government. And we would be in an election right now. But what did the Conservatives do? They had 138 MPs vote nay. 22 plus 7 is 29, plus 1 is 30, plus 138 is 168. How many Liberals voted nay? 168. Had all the Conservatives voted with the Bloc NDP and Greens, it would be 168, 168. But 168 and 168 does not make 343. That means that there were a certain number of Conservative MPs who could have voted just one more, 169 to 168, and the government would have fallen. Pierre did not pull the trigger. So if we're talking about liars, Conservative vote, those of you who went all in for Pierre and you just hate the Liberals and you would like to remove him out of office as quickly as possible, that could have happened. That could have happened on Friday, November 7th. Except Pierre, for all his big talk and his large mouth, had tiny, the tiniest of testicles. Pierre keeps on saying he wants an election. But when it comes time to actually make the government fall to get one, he was too chicken. He was too chicken to go through with it. Pierre's scared. He wants the fundraising dollars. He wants you to believe, he wants his base to believe that he's ready to go to an election now, but he's not. Because he could have made the government fall. The 3 other opposition parties got together and voted in a block. They dared him. And he chickened out. He pacoed, if you will. I'm sure if that news got around to the base and was as publicized as Pierre's press conference claiming he has nothing to change, that might change a couple of minds within his base. Pierre's not in there for you. Pierre just wants to remain a government employee as long as humanly possible, because it's a really good gig. And he can't do anything else. How's that for some news? All right. Getting back to it, kids and cubs. When I said that comment about Pierre being so loved by his party, um, well, that might not actually be the case. Yesterday, there's a polling opinion company called Spark that released some data, and this here, according to Bruce Anderson's Substack. The list of politicians who gain popularity after 20 years in public life is short. When it happens, it involves a major change in the politician or a bigger change in the world they are competing in. It can happen, but usually doesn't. For conservatives to bet that Pierre Poilièvre is the best choice to lead them into the next election requires them to believe that Poilièvre will become competitive with Mark Carney or that no one could do better. Poilièvre probably had his career season in 2024. His snarl matched the mood of many people. His everything is broken felt like the daily experience of too many. His promise to give young people hope met them where they lived and got them to invest some of their attention in politics again. The question for conservatives is whether that 24 season was his peak. To answer that, it's useful to look at why 2024 was such a good year for him. He didn't become more popular. If anything, he alienated more people. He just did it at a slower pace than his main rival, Justin Trudeau. Trudeau's scar tissue was normal for someone who's been ahead of government after 10 years. You make choices, you disappoint some. Trudeau's 3 election wins are a political success story. As per our latest polling, nationwide sample, 2,985 adults online, which is a very large sample for public opinion polling, Poilièvre has charmed 41% of the people and turned off 45%. Poilièvre managed to create a lot of negative opinion about himself without having to take the kind of major decisions a political leader takes, decisions that could disappoint people. Some may argue that he built a stronger, firmer base. Others might argue insisted that the spotlight shine on himself, Pierre for PM, and then ignored the evidence that his personality was rubbing people the wrong way. Both things can be true. And here we have some data about how Canadians are feeling about either of them here. As presented by Carney, very positive 20 and positive 37, negative 17, negative 17. So so positives 57, negatives 34 for a net positive of 23%. Feelings of Pierre Poilièvre, very positive 13%, positive 28% for a total positive 41%, negative 17%, very negative 28% for a negative score of 45. And that's a negative 4 for Pierre Poilièvre as a net. Stephen Harper didn't see Poilièvre as cabinet material after he won the election in 2006 or after the election of 2011. Sorry, after he won the election in 2006 or after the election in 2008 or after the election in 2011. It was only in 2013 that Harper gave Poilièvre a Minister of State role, and it was only in the final months of Harper's 10 years in office that he gave Poilièvre a full cabinet post. By that time, Harper had cycled through more than 70 other Conservative MPs. So Poilièvre was far from the first choice. So doubts about Poilièvre didn't start last week. They've been around for a long time. As the Conservative leader battles to keep a lid on the evident discomfort some of his MPs have with his leadership, it's not hard to understand why the discomfort is there. There are credible leadership alternatives on Poilièvre's front bench and some who are outside elected office for now. It's risky to believe in polling that suggests no one could do better than Poilièvre. Some of that is a little more than a function of name recognition. I'm reminded of polls I did in 2024 when Mark Carney trailed all the leadership rivals he ran against and eventually beat by a wide margin. For a while, those snapshots in time suggested he couldn't beat Pierre Poilièvre, such was the hesitation about the Liberal brand after 10 years. What I would consider were I still a conservative, I was a progressive conservative for a number of years, is this. When asked in our latest survey, what would be best for the Conservative Party? Again, the question, what would be best for the Conservative Party? 64% of the party said, 64% of respondents said the party would be better off to change leaders. This includes 33% of those who are currently planning on voting Conservative and 47% of those who consider their own politics to be right of center. On the center, where about half of all the voters are, 2 out of 3 think that Conservatives would be better off with someone new. Of course, this isn't necessarily an indication of how that leadership vote within the party will go in January, but it is an indicator that those who will make this choice can't help but notice. A healthy level of support for a leader of a party people say they plan on voting on is north of 80%. There are about 9 weeks until the Conservatives decide if they want Poilièvre to be their standard bearer. I have no doubt that he will win a majority of those votes, and given his attention to organizing for his outcome, he might well win a giant number. Anything less than 80% would leave him weakened and his party destabilized. If the first number is a 7, hell, he may continue to break loose in Conservative ranks. But one thing seems clear. Betting on Poilièvre is betting that someone who's been in politics for 20 years will grow more popular, and the odds tell us that only rarely happens. And here there is another graph that I want you to take a look at, because this is the one that made my top. Would it be best for Conservatives to look for a new leader? National numbers, 64% of Canadians say the Conservatives should be looking for a new leader. This is pretty much equivalent, even in all regions, 61% in BC, 60 in Alberta, 66 in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, 63 in Ontario, 67 in Quebec, and 63% in Atlantic Canada. Now, if we look at party affiliation, 81% of Liberals believe that the Conservatives need a new leader, 77% of NDP, 71% of the Bloc, but only 33% of Conservatives think that the Conservatives need a new leader, 1/3. Now, 1/3 is still important, because if 1/3 of your voters decide that they can't vote for the Liberals, but they do vote for the couch and to sit on their hands, that hurts. But of voters who self-identify as being right, center, and left, on the left, 77% believe that the Conservatives need a new leader. 67% of voters who consider themselves centrists believe the Conservatives need a new leader. And of the voters who consider themselves right-leaning, 47% of them believe that Pierre should be gone. Only 53% of voters in Canada who self-identify as being right of center believe that Pierre should stay. That's only 3% above half. That's not an overwhelming majority. That's not a resounding vote of confidence. And this, when you say right, this would be CPC voters, probably PPC voters, and voters who are currently supporting Liberals, but who probably consider themselves progressive Conservatives. 47% of Canadians who self-identify as being on the right think Pierre should. Ooh, that is not a good number in any way, shape, or form going into a leadership review, which kind of makes us wonder, kits and cubs, here at the Beaver Lodge, whether or not, is it lettuce time, Canada? Is it time to break out the lettuce? Might be a little premature. We like to have fun. Now, another piece of news that is probably going to make Pierre spit teeth, because Pierre keeps on complaining that, it was that Trump thing. If it wasn't for Trump, I would be prime minister right now. Well, and there has been some movement in that Canadians' concerns with Trump, which were very high during the election, because all that talk about annexation, seemed to have dissipated. Affordability was the number one issue, again, which is terrain that Conservatives and Pierre are comfortable on. Well, maybe not so much anymore. According to Spencer Van Dyke of CTV News, Canadians' concerns about U.S. President Donald Trump and the state of relations with our southern neighbor are once again on the rise, according to new data from Nanos Research. Nearly 18% of respondents in Nanos' research weekly issues tracking said Trump and Canada-U.S. relations are their greatest concern, doubling from 8.8% last month. The next issue of concern with the highest number of respondents is jobs in the economy, nearly statistically tied with Trump at 17.1%. Quote, "The thing is those issues are all interrelated," said Nanos Research founder and chief data scientist Nick Nanos in an interview with CTV News. Quote, "When people are thinking about Trump in the US, they're thinking about what does this mean for the jobs and the economy. It speaks to uncertainty and worry that many Canadians have about the binational relationship and what it might mean for the economy in Canada," he added. Nanos pointed to two significant events in recent weeks that are likely driving the rise of Canadians' concern on those issues: the Ontario anti-tariff ad and the federal budget. The ad, paid for by the government of Ontario, features a clip of former Republican U.S. President Ronald Reagan in a speech saying tariffs hurt every American. In response to the ad, Trump announced he was terminating trade talks with Canada and imposing an additional 10% tariff on Canadian goods. It remains unclear when those levies will come into effect. The federal government, meanwhile, largely hinges on increasing the Canadian economy's resilience and reducing its dependence on the U.S. amid the ongoing trade war. Quote, "Think of those two events as driving focus for Canadians and Canada-U.S. relationship and what it means for the Canadian economy," Nanos said. Trump, as the central issue of concern for Canadians, according to Nanos Research figures, peaked at more than 40% last January when the U.S. president moved back into the White House and threatened to impose sweeping tariffs on Canadian goods. The two countries have been in a protracted trade war ever since. Quote, "Since then, it's less intense, but it's basically a roller coaster ride," Nanos said, describing Canadians' concern about Trump as up and down several times over the last 11 months. Quote, "For all intents and purposes, when we're thinking about Trump and U.S. relations, it's like an emotional and political and an economic roller coaster ride. That Canadians think perhaps we'll be able to make some headway, and then there's a twist in the story like the ad by the Ontario government. That's a setback." Nanos also does weekly political tracking, which shows the Liberals are out of their post-election honeymoon phase and now within just a few points of the Conservatives. Prime Minister Mark Carney, however, remains more than 20 points ahead of Conservative leader Pierre Poilièvre on the question of preferred Prime Minister. So, Canadians are still seized with the issue of Trump. They still like Carney much more than Pierre. They still think that Carney is the better man for the job with anything having to do with the United States. And among Canadian voters, about 2/3 of us think that the Conservative Party would do better with a better leader. And among Canadians who identify as voters on the right of the political spectrum, only 53% believe that Pierre should remain. Put all those data points together, along with the fact that he's been slipping the last 4 weeks, forgot to do his job in Parliament one day, had an MP defect, and had another one just straight up resign, with a lot on the rumor mill stating that there probably will be one or two more bits of news potentially coming on the 17th for maximum impact. It would seem to me that Pierre doesn't have the luxury of saying he has nothing to learn, nothing to change, but, well, Pierre's going to do Pierre, I guess. It's a bold move, Cotton. Let's see how it works out for you. But right now, the numbers don't seem to be on your side. And Canadians seem to be preoccupied more with things that do not advantage you. And the idea is starting to get into their head that maybe you don't smell as fresh as you once did. This is not good news for Conservatives. And it's particularly not good news for Pierre. This is not good data in any way, shape, or form. Again, is it lettuce time? Perhaps. 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 Oh man, it's a day here. It's a day here. All right, kids and cubs. You know what? I think that's going to be it for today. I think we have a show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do. It means a lot to us, especially when you share a little something and say why it is that our content is resonating with you. So thank you for your help in that department. Again, very valuable. We can't buy that type of advertising. Kids and cubs, if you would like us to help you because sometimes you're a busy beaver or cub on the go, making things happen in the world, but you want to remain abreast of what's going on, well, hey, we got something for you so that you can be at two places at once. Yeah, because sometimes you can't watch the show live with the Dan fam or even on your own time. But what you can do is take a trip down to our pod page, which is made available thanks to the generous sponsorship of the Ray Girl. You scan that QR code, or you go to podpage.com/the true north eager beaver with a hyphen between each one of those words. And there you go and click subscribe. And when we have something off the audio cast, ears only, bandwidth, zip right into your podcast feed. You download us. We are lightweight and portable. And there you go. You can take on the day and remain informed at the same time. I know. Mind blown, right? Technology. But we like to help. So we made this available to you. Now, kids and cubs, if you would like to help us, well, one of the ways you can do that is by grabbing your e-surfboard and hanging 10 all the way down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page, where our most beloved kids, Cassie and Elaine, will be urging and beckoning you to smash with our buttons, like, share, subscribe, get a little freaky. It helps us with the algorithm, and it makes us happy when we see our numbers go up. So thank you for your support. And if you would like to help us in other ways, kids and cubs, say, for example, financial, because we do incur some costs to bring this show to you, we would be very grateful for your help via a contribution to the Eager Beaver Lodge's Emergency Hydration Fund. And this QR code right here will take you there. It's our coffee page. That's coffee spelled ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. And if you can drop a couple of toonies or loonies in there and make them make that lovely jingling sound when it hits the bottom of the jar, that will make sure that you will have done your part to keep your favorite beaver moist. Because a moist beaver is a happy beaver. And I do like to be a happy beaver. So, kids and cubs, if you can contribute to our hydration fund, that would be absolutely spectacular. And we would be very grateful for your enthusiastic expression of support. Now, if you're doing the Buy Canadian thing, kids and cubs, and I hope that you are, you can use our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, to send us a direct bank-to-bank transfer. And that way, none of the USCE tech bros will get a share of your money. We get 100% of it, which means your donation goes further. And if you're watching on YouTube, remember that we have the Super Chat memberships. All of that helps. And we appreciate your support, kids and cubs, very much. Thank you so much. Because democracy is something that you do, kids and cubs, we have a little new tidbit for you. It would appear, I think it is on Prince Edward Island, if I'm not mistaken. Going to take a look. Yeah, indeed. There is a by-election that has been announced for you, and it is to bring, I think, the newly minted leader of the PEI Liberal Party, Robert Mitchell, seat to gain access to the legislature, according to Stephen Brune of CBC News. The new leader of PEI's Liberal Party will look to win a seat in the legislature through a by-election on December 8th. Meanwhile, the governing Progressive Conservatives also confirmed their candidate during a nomination meeting Monday night. Robert Mitchell said in a news release that he's running as the party's candidate for the December 8th by-election in District 2, Georgetown Pownal, or Pownal. I don't know how that's pronounced. If there are any Islanders in the chat, please do let me know. Mitchell, a former Liberal MLA and cabinet minister from 2007 to 2020, handily won the party's leadership race over Todd Cormier back on October 4th, but he has not been elected to the PEI Legislative Assembly. The opportunity to win a seat opened after the resignation of former Progressive Conservative MLA and cabinet minister Stephen Myers in early October, which triggered the need for a by-election in District 2. Quote, I want to be a voice for all Islanders, and the first step is gaining the trust of constituents in Georgetown Pownal, Mitchell said in the release. I look forward to knocking on doors, meeting the community, and having real conversations with Islanders on their future. The release notes Mitchell's decision to run in the by-election is supported by the Liberal caucus, the Georgetown Pownal District Association, and the party. It said he grew up in Eastern PEI and spent much of his time in this district throughout his life. Meanwhile, the governing PCs confirmed Brendan Curran as their candidate in District 2. He bested Ray Brow during a nomination meeting Monday night. According to the party's website, Curran is a lifelong resident of Kings County who was the Clean Technology Project Coordinator with PEI Energy Corporation before moving on to work in the Premier's office. Quote, I'm running because I believe in the power of public service and the importance of listening to the people in the district, Curran said in a release on the site. I've worked behind the scenes to help shape policy and solve problems for over a decade, and now I'm ready to take my experience and continue to serve the community in this new capacity. Neither the provincial NDP nor the Green Party has confirmed a candidate for the Georgetown Pownal by-election. The deadline for candidate nominations is Friday, November 21st at 2 p.m. Advanced polls will take place on November 29th, December 1st, and December 5th. Voting will be open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. each of those days. The by-election results won't change the balance of power in the province. Premier Rob Lance's PCs have a majority in the 27-seat Legislative Assembly with 19 seats, compared to 4 for the Liberals and 3 for the Greens. So there we go. We have a by-election in Prince Edward Island. So please get ready to do democracy. And of course, we have our 2 petitions for you. Our Commons petition E6679 to hopefully bring about a little bit more honesty. Sorry, I may have been mistaken there. 6689, is it? No, once again, the thing will not come up. Very frustrating. And that's the thing that Mr. Sanchez says, that sometimes our common site goes down. And then the other petition with regard to media ownership and making it such that Canadian media is by Canadians for Canadians and in the best interest of Canadians. I can't give you the petition numbers today because for some reason the R Commons petition site is down at the current moment. But if you look for them, you will find them. And of course, we will keep on mentioning them on future shows. So don't worry about that. You will have an opportunity if you have not signed yet. Words of wisdom, kits and cubs. Today, words of wisdom. Oh, look, the days just got better. It started out raining and gray, and now it is beautiful and sunshiny. So I will inspire myself from that. If your day is a little gray, then just put a little sunshine in your heart. And who knows, maybe Mother Nature will hear your call. There you go. All right, kits and cubs. Could be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now at the count of 3, kits and cubs, if I may ask for your indulgence, could I please ask you to say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, 3. Ooh, I heard you. Wow, there was some extra volume there. And you meant that. You said that with your full chest. And therefore, as your humble queen, I must serve. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors. The Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community. And The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, Cubs, and just a tiny little bit of news about Canadians who make us proud. Canada's under-17 men's soccer team is playing in the under-17 World Cup, and after the first round, it was very tight because all four teams went 1 win, 1 draw, and 1 loss. But Team Canada did end up in second place and is advancing in the playoffs, just as the women did. So congratulations to our young men who are competing, and we wish them a lot of luck in their first round of the playoffs. And in addition, the ATP Tour finals are taking place, and Felix Auger-Aliassime made the year-end finals. Lost his first match against Yannick Sinner, but did defeat Blake Shelton, and so far is sitting in third place in his pool with 1 match left to go against Zverev. And Auger-Aliassime has had Zverev's number, so there is a very good chance that he might finish in the top 2 in the pool and advance to the playoffs as one of the top 4 tennis players of the year. So very excited for him. And a little bit of sad news. Gabriela Dabrowski and Aaron Routliffe, a great doubles team that had formed recently and won 2 Grand Slam championships together, as well as the WTA doubles finals last year, are going to be splitting up as a duo. Which breaks my heart because they were so good together and were doing so well and definitely had a bright future. But it seems that they are going their separate ways. So we'll see with whom Gabriela Dabrowski will partner with next year. Hopefully it will be Leila Annie Fernandez to have an all-Canadian duo because both of them are pretty good doubles players. But we'll see what happens from that point on. But yeah, a great partnership is, or a very successful partnership at least, is coming to an end, unfortunately. I really thought that they were going to stick together for the following year, considering that Aaron Routliffe really stuck with Dabrowski this year, given her breast cancer diagnosis and treatment. I don't know if the split in partnership might have to do with Dabrowski's health. She might have to be playing maybe a lesser schedule next year, and maybe they decided to part ways so that that would not hinder Routliffe's progress, because Routliffe does have the ability to become the number 1 doubles player in the world, but not with a partner that might have to miss some key tournaments over the course of the season for health reasons. So that may be what's behind it. I'm not exactly sure what the reason given was, but yes, they will be moving on. Which is sad because I was looking forward to many more Grand Slam titles between them two. And Gabriela Dabrowski building herself a Hall of Fame career. She also has an Olympic medal in doubles with Felix Auger-Aliassime, so she's pretty much well on her way. And she has 2 mixed doubles Grand Slam titles as well. So, 4 Grand Slam titles and an Olympic medal is pretty, and a top 10 player in the world for a long time. Should generally be enough for a Hall of Fame career, but I'm sure she is hungry for more. All right, that's all I got for you, kids and cubs. I am off. Have a beaverific day.